Tip and listen.
Cape Cod is a peninsula that sticks out into the Atlantic Ocean.
Due to the exposure of the open ocean, the Cape and Islands are subject to considerable coast erosion.
The bulk of land on Cape Cod consists of glacial landforms.
Many kettle ponds were formed and remain on Cape Cod as a result of receding glaciers.
When much of Earth's waters was locked into massive ice sheets, the water level was much lower and many of these bayside beaches were deep forests.
Sea levels rose quickly at first, 50 feet per 1,000 years, but then the rate declined. Between 6,000 and 2,000 years ago, the sea level rose about 10 feet per millennium. The tides and water currents transported the eroded deposits north along the Cape's outer shoreline.
The entire town of Provincetown at the extreme tip of the Cape consists of entirely deposited marine sediments that was eroded and transported from further south. So basically Provincetown and some of the outer Cape towns are just a sandbar. This process continues today.
Geologists say that due to the erosion, the Cape will be completely submerged by the sea within 1,000 years, but people are already feeling the effects today.
In 1991, Hurricane Bob broke through the shoreline barrier of Chatham and exposed the town to submerges with no obstruction. By looking at a map of Chatham today, you can still see the effects.
A little confusing to the uninitiated, Upper Cape is south and Lower Cape is north. Upper Cape consists of Bourne, Sandwich, Falmouth, and Mashpee. Mid Cape is Barnstable, Yarmouth, and Dennis. And Lower Cape is Harwich, Brewster, Chatham, Orleans, Eastham, Wellfleet, Truro, and Provincetown. Season 1, low-key trash. Low-key trash. Low-key trash. Low-key trash. Welcome to the bay. Low-key trash. Low-key trash. Low-key trash. Yo, listen, we've been creating forever, man. What do you mean creativity? You know, unless people you carry along, those people you carry along with you throughout life. Yo, listen, don't judge us. This is Cape Cod. View life on the tip. Here we are again. Low-key trash. Episode 3. You here with Berg?
Your boy Jay.
And today we're gonna talk about the Cape. Give you guys a little history, a little bit of our history, and just like, you know, what it is out here. The true view from the tip, Cape tip, you know. Some of you might already know, like we got some ties to the town, to the Cape. Of course, a lot of us grew up here. A lot of our listeners grew up here. The Cape is a beautiful place. It's a nice place, you know. About 2 hours from Boston. It's a sandbar, big ass sandbar. I went to school in Provincetown. Transferred to school in Harwich. And did a little college in Hyannis, so lived in and did a little bit of the whole Cape, you know. How about you, Jay?
No, started in Provincetown, transferred over to Eastham, a school called Nauset. Went off Cape after that, came back.
The Cape is connected in a weird way because it's so small, but everybody knows each other through something, whether it's sports or work or you know, other reasons. You know, it gets crazy out here sometimes. All right, so yeah.
So how'd you end up out here? Like, what made you come to this place called Cape Cod?
What made me come here?
Mm-hmm.
My parents made me come here when I was very young. I didn't really want to come here. This is just a place we used to vacation. I had family out here. I used to live in Boston. When we came here because my grandfather was out here. You know, rest in peace. He got sick, passed away. Moved out here. Started coming to school here. And like, it was just different, you know, like it's different from the city.
Definitely.
You know, like living out here is way different in many ways, but it's almost better.
Yeah, I agree. Like similar. Moved out to the Cape from the city in Rhode Island. Great grandmother lived here. She was not doing too well, so we came to help. And I think it's just like you said, it's different. It's safer. Like, I know in the city I was young. I couldn't just go outside. I had a curfew.
Yeah, couldn't go off the stoop.
Got to be in the area of my house. But coming to P-Town, it was crazy. I was allowed to just go in town, just be out there all night.
Yeah, you got to be a kid.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like, which is rare now. You know, with people with the internet. You know, you got you know, it's tough out there now. You can't just be letting your kids out and roam around. You know. You gotta be careful. People are weirdos these days. You're right. Like, it used to be the same way. Like, where I lived at, like, we wasn't allowed to leave the stoop. Like, we had a little area we could hang out in, but no hanging out past sundown. You know, like, you gotta go in the house. So when we got to come out here to the Cape, it was always like great because we got to just do whatever we want to do. Got to be free, feel comfortable. Stay out later, I guess.
You didn't even have to lock your doors like that.
No, we didn't have to lock our doors. We could just walk in. Everybody had an open house.
Yep.
But it has its positives and its negatives, you know. Like, I used to I really didn't like coming out here when I was younger. I used to hate it, but eventually I grew to love it. Literally, the Cape is like big, but it's small. Like, but it's not even. This is the thing. Like, people think like I think this is where the confusion comes in because, you know, we have that canal, you know, the man-made canal. So I think that's why people say that, you know, some towns are not from the Cape just because of the canal. But I like to say it's all the Cape personally. Like, once you get to like Plymouth, you know, I think that's where the Cape starts, realistically. But yeah, I don't know. I think the Cape's crazy. Like, the way we have to survive in the wintertime out here. The winters are hard as hell. You know, we're like in the water in the middle of the ocean, so, you know, we're either getting the worst storm or we're not getting the storm at all. You know, it's no happy medium. I feel like with the way the Cape is growing, eventually the winter is gonna be turned into the summertime. In time, it's all gonna be the same. I mean, nobody really hates living by the water, you know. The beaches, the fishing, the food.
Also the laid-back style here.
Yeah, the laid-back style is definitely it's good, especially if you're used to the high-paced lifestyle. You come out here and you know, slow down a little bit, get to think, you know, get out of your routine.
The value of houses out here.
Yeah. I suppose
retire.
if you're selling a house, I mean,
Even like Chatham got nice houses.
yeah, Chatham has expensive houses, super big, super expensive, super rich.
Super rich.
Osterville, Oyster Harbors. I don't know if you guys know about Oyster Harbors. You ever heard of Oyster Harbors?
I haven't.
You know why?
Why's that?
Cause we're too broke.
Where's
Oyster Harbors is a gated island. When I was going to school at 4Cs, Cape Cod Community College, you know, in Barnstable, I used to take these rides, you know, smoke a little reefer, take a little ride, go down these little private roads in these houses, these big, huge houses. I remember my friend PJ told me about this one area called Oyster Harbors, which is like a gated island that like you can't even get into unless you have like a special card or a special code, and it's a whole entire island. That's a whole part of the Cape I never even seen before or heard of.
And this is in Osterville?
It's in that area. And I think there's a lot of those little areas out there that we don't even know about, and we've been living here for years. But when you talk about house value, that's crazy because that's you're absolutely right. If you can sell one, it's even crazier, you know?
Definitely.
Like, I've never even heard. Like, look that shit up. I promise you. Look it up. Gordito. Fact check. We're not trying to take away from the tourists, you know, the tourism out here on the Cape or anything. But yeah, we got sharks out here now. We got great white sharks, like in Jaws. And people are getting bit. A lot. It's kind of crazy. And yeah, exactly. I would say the biggest pro is the water, but now that you say that, I don't really know anymore. I forgot about those guys. And I think it's interesting because like the theory is that they don't want the people to know, but yeah, we got sharks out here. But they don't really bother me because I don't go in the water, so I have no beef with the sharks.
I think expensive living.
The cost of living?
Or
yeah.
even like for us, like we graduate high school, It's too much for us to even get a house.
Yeah, it's tough because it's expensive out here.
Super expensive.
You know, not only in P-Town, but the whole Cape. Pretty sure everybody can relate to that. I mean, if you live out here. And it also depends on how much your town cares about their people, I guess, because you can live in one town and be super expensive, and the next town's like not even 5 miles away, and it's way less, you know. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it just depends on where. I think it depends on where you are on the Cape more so. Cause I've definitely lived in Hyannis, and it was like it was cheaper for me to live there, but it was just a lot more congested, and like, I don't know, it's just different than being out here way fast paced. It's like, I guess Hyannis is like the city of the Cape, so it's not the city, but it's comparable, I guess, to the city of the Cape. And I don't know, I guess it was convenient, you know. You don't have to drive miles away to go shopping. You don't have to, you know, if you want to get your car checked out, you don't gotta, you know, call all different people. You can just go right down the street. It's not like here, you know. It's just different on the end of P-Town.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the summer. Like, we only really had the summer for jobs.
Yeah.
Which kind of takes away from what do you do in the winter.
Yeah, out here in P-Town, but if you go a couple towns over, there's definitely more year-round jobs. Definitely, at least Orleans, or they got jobs up there.
Yeah, Orleans, yeah.
And to travel is not like a problem out here. Like, it's really not as bad as traveling in the city or anywhere else. Like, you only gotta go so far.
And then we get a lot of exchange students too.
Oh yeah, they work hard.
They do work super hard.
But like, the exchange is different where they're from, so they come here and they make money and they go home, and then they don't have to work. They just go to school. But like, living here year round is hard. I mean, it amazes me the people who come here by choice and just want to live here through the winter time. Like, I understand liking living here, but like, you coming from somewhere else to where it's more expensive to live, but you're getting less, it just doesn't make sense to me, you know? These little villages and towns and things, now that I think about it, there's just, for some reason, that just brought something to my head right now. Plymouth Rock, right? People say like that's where the Pilgrims settled, right? And they say they first landed in P-Town and then basically traveled to Plymouth and settled there, you know? Like, that's where they made their, but in between that, they did all the pillaging and the raping and all that. And it sort of makes sense because, like, down here, all the names of the town, all the names of the families are on the streets. And the further up Cape you go, the more of the Native American names start to come into the streets and the towns and the names. And then you get to Mashpee, which is like the Wampanoag, like, that's like the headquarters, like, of the whole country. Is Mashpee, like the Wampanoag tribe, that's the headquarters, you know? And that's kind of crazy to me now that has like hit me.
But like, when I was in school in the city doing history, we heard Cape Cod. I didn't hear about Sandwich, Falmouth, Hyannis. I didn't even know what those places were till I moved out here.
When you leave Massachusetts, nobody knows what Cape Cod is.
But if they do, they know what Provincetown is.
Yeah. The Cape starts when you come to the bridge, the Sagamore Bridge, go over the bridge, boom, you're on the Cape. We live in Provincetown. That's the tip.
Furthest you can go.
The furthest you can go east, besides Maine. Yeah, that's a fact. You can fact check that too.
Cape Cod has a year-round population of about 220,000 and doubles to over 500,000 during the summertime.
Cape Cod is known as a spring to fall destination for sports fishing. Among the species most pursued are striped bass, bluefish, and bluefin tuna. Flounder and fluke are also on the menu.
Harwich is considered the birthplace of the cranberry industry. The first commercial operation opened in 1846 and set the pace for the rest of the Cape production.
Wellfleet is known throughout the world for its oysters.
The Cape Cod cocktail is a well-known drink around the world made with vodka and cranberry.
There are 8 working lighthouses on the Cape. Mile to mile, one of the largest concentration of working lighthouses in the world.
Barnstable, the most populated town on Cape, is the only one to have adopted all-city form of government, whose legislative body is an elected 13-member council.
All the other towns elect a 5-member board of selectmen and utilize town meetings as their legislative body. Most agencies, including the Cape Cod Commission and Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, treat the Cape as an island with regard to evacuation, preparedness, and groundwater management. The elevation ranges from 306 feet to shore level, with over 500 miles of coastline and more than 60 public beaches.
Cape Cod incorporates all Barnstable County. In 1991, Hurricane Bob broke through the shoreline barrier of Chatham and exposed the town to surges with no obstruction. By looking at a map of Chatham today, you can still see the effects.
There are also many smaller islands off the main peninsula. Some are privately owned. So sometimes people say Cape Cod and the islands. I've never been to Martha's Vineyard though. I've been to pretty much every town in the Cape, except Martha's Vineyard, if we're counting them.
Martha's Vineyard is counted.
I know when people say, "Oh, I've been to the Cape," they definitely say, "Oh, I've been to the Cape. Where'd you go?" "Oh, I was in Nantucket."
Well, yeah, we're Cape and Islands.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm assuming those are the islands when they. But it's the Cape and Islands. They're just islands. I don't know. I'm not gonna be the one to say. But yeah, so
Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket's population has grown by 10.3% and 6.8% from 2000 to 2010, while the year-round population of Cape Cod in total has dropped 3% according to the census.
Yeah, I just think niggas ain't fucking with the census anymore, so that's a lie.
I think the living too, also in those islands, probably a lot cheaper. I know there's a lot of Jamaicans, Haitians out there, Brazilians. You got Salvadorians.
Yeah, definitely
cultures.
with the different cultures coming in. I think the Cape's gonna expand, but that goes into the work thing, you know, like it's gonna be seasonal. Like these people, with our president and the way it's going. These people aren't trying to take chances, so like the workforce could grow, but as far as like people actually settling and making families and staying, it's not like. And places like Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket they're not cheap, you know. It's like pretty much like P-Town, like small island with not many places to work, seasonal, you know. People make their money in the summertime, and it's even tougher out there because in order to get anywhere, you gotta go on a ferry. You have to leave the friggin' island.
Yeah, I always felt bad for them, like during say a snowstorm comes or anything like that. They're pretty fricked out there.
I mean,
they're on an island. They got nowhere to go. They're trapped.
True. But on the same note, we also are trapped. Here, there's one way in and one way out. There's no way everybody here could leave at the same time.
Oh.
Yo, if there was a natural disaster and everybody decided to leave the Cape at the same time, we would be the last niggas to get out.
Islands off the main peninsula, some are privately owned, like Nashon Island, which is owned by the Forbes family.
All right, that fact is crazy to me, actually. Like the Forbes? Like Forbes magazine. All right, so we got the Kennedys, we got the Forbes, we got the Spears, Britney Spears. We got everything. We got everybody out here. Taylor Swift, I heard she was hanging out here with the Kennedys. I heard, like, that's kind of crazy. Like, this is how you know the Cape is like a low key spot that, you know, this is where you come to if you really want to get away and you really want to get your mind right from that crazy life. Remember that story about when Kelly Rowland came out here and she got lost in the fog? She tried to go on a boat trip and they said, no, we shouldn't go. And she's like, no, let's go. And they went and they got lost in the fog on the water. And then the Coast Guard had to go find them while she was visiting P-Town.
Wow.
Google it. Fact check. This is for Berg. What does the term wash ashore mean? And who is considered a wash ashore? A wash ashore to me is someone who is literally just here because they were floating around in the world and they don't really know, so they came here and got accepted. Like, this town is accepting, so you can go anywhere you want, do what you want to do, no one's gonna judge you, and you can literally restart your life here and restart your name and be successful. But you're just a wash ashore, which means you came from somewhere. You can't hide that. It's gonna come back, but you can definitely come here and start something. I heard one statistic that stated there were more deaths than births 1 year in Provincetown. I absolutely believe the fact or the note that there are more deaths than births in Provincetown. I believe it wholeheartedly. It's not unbelievable, you know. There's no schools anymore. There's no families really. Like, there's barely any families in the town. I mean, you might have roots here, but you don't live here, and it's kind of crazy because you sort of like, you want to live here for your roots, but then reality is like, you can't live here for your roots. You got to live for yourself at the end of the day. I know one thing is that, like, if you have a family here and you've been making money here for years, you don't want to leave here because that's obviously a root in your family. That's a staple of money. That's what you have been doing for all this time, and you want to stay here. But there's other businesses buying out the businesses. It's a crazy way of gentrifying the town that we're not even aware of, that no one really talks about. You have to really like think about your priorities, and like, everybody's gonna question your decisions, and you gotta pick, like, is it family over business constantly, no matter what you're doing, whether you're giving people discounts and shit. So I feel like it's really up to the businesses, because the families, they can't stay here. You know, it's a business town. You can't continue with business and put your family in jeopardy. You just gotta do business where business is being held, basically.
Growing up as a teenager on Cape Cod was like, it's definitely different than it is now, for sure. I think there were things to do. We had clubs like Teen Night, where a bunch of us would just all get together. I also think playing sports was big. Like, nowadays, sports isn't really that big on Cape Cod. I feel a lot of kids aren't doing basketball camps and whatever your sport is. I feel like there's a lack of that now. Like, the decline of it shutting down, for sure, it started to show more. I would even go back to coaching. As far as coaches just didn't really care about coaching anymore. And it gave kids like lack of I don't know, kids just, I feel, for me, honestly, I love Provincetown. I think more so of that was just not the opportunities. Other schools were giving more opportunities.
I want to chime in on that because it's crazy, because I was never like a coach out here in P-Town, but when I moved to Hyannis and I worked at the rec, and I was a coach for kids from like kindergarten to high school at the recreation. 3 out of 4 of my age groups won championships. And it's like, when you work with like kids like that who just like aren't really like able to make it in the high school range and shit, like, they're always like trying mad hard, but it's dope.
Those kids have like the passion.
Yeah, but it's more so like they are trying to work for something that they didn't get to work for in school. So it's double the passion, I think. They know they're not at a regular level. They're at a recreation shit, you know? Like, everybody knows the rec, but the rec is where the good kids are at, you know.
You go from Zach's senior year to his coach leaving to the next coach who doesn't really care about basketball, but he's gonna coach just to coach.
Yeah.
And it gives those kids like.
Yo, I loved coaching these kids though. Like, it's so weird though, cause it's like, it's something I didn't think I would do, but I really definitely know I inherited it just from playing ball with the coaches I had. So it's like watching them coach, and then like I just like take that and just instill that in these kids, in a town I don't even live in, or nothing. I don't even know these kids, and I'm just working at a random recreation, and these kids are like understanding what I'm saying to them, and I'm like, yo, like this is kind of crazy to me, you know, like, damn, like maybe they was definitely teaching me the right thing. Yeah, boom, yeah. But all I'm doing is saying it and acting it up, boom, boom, and we winning, and I'm like, yo, this is crazy, like. You know, I'm saying like, yo, boxing one. And these niggas they're doing it. Like, freak, you in like 4th grade doing that shit in Barnstable. Like, coaches looking at me like, oh, how do you do this? I got bum ass kids on my team. I make these niggas do layups, all that.
I think depends on where in Cape you're trying to live too. Because I mean, Hyannis is probably not the place I want to start a family. I don't think a lot of people would say, oh, I want to plan to start a family in Hyannis or.
No, definitely no one's saying that right now. They're definitely not saying that, but like, it depends. Like, there's a stigma. There's definitely stigmas and shit. You know, especially what's going on right now. Like, we can be real and talk about like, yeah, like there's shit going on that nobody wants to talk about. That's what I was saying earlier. Like, that deters the freaking tourists. You know, like the sharks. They don't want to talk about the sharks, and they don't want to talk about the overdoses. So, whatever, but that's what it is. But being people who live here and have friends and shit who are dying from that type of stuff, like, you have to talk about it. They want to live here because they think it's one way when it's really not. Like, people move here from big cities. That doesn't make sense to me. And they live here, and then it's like, oh my God, I can't handle this, and they leave. People live. How many people have you met and you've met them and then you never see them again?
I mean, that happens all the time.
But living here though, just living in your town. But if you lived in a small town in anywhere else or a hood, you're not gonna find people like that. You're not gonna meet that many people. Like, we meet so many people every single summer, every single year, that we're never going to talk to again, versus people who just see the same people every day.
I do praise Hyannis for having a huge recreation. I think if somewhere in the Lower Cape had something like that, it would help all ages keep busy, stay out of trouble, have things to do, not be bored on their phones, on social media all the time. I mean, Cape needs a lot of things, but
we've been like living in the apocalypse before the apocalypse was here, so we're already prepared for it, you know. Like, there's deer out here, there's all sorts of turkey, there's all sorts of weasels, there's all sorts of animals you can survive out here. National Seashore is just holding that so that you can't do that on their land, because they know that's where the resources are. But if the shit was hit the fan and in the Cape and P-Town was to be like, oh, it's an emergency. Like, think about how much the National Seashore has of P-Town, and compared to what we actually have to be able to go into. That's true. Like, the land that the National Seashore has to guard is so much more than P-Town. Looks big on the map, but realistically, it's even smaller. Like, you know what I mean? We are living on a sliver of P-Town, if you think about it. We're living on a freaking sliver.
The Wampanoag tribe is native to Cape Cod.
Wampanoag means Easterners, or literally people of the dawn.
Women were responsible for up to 75% of food production. The men traveled far north for seasonal fishing expeditions. The women cultivated corn, beans, and squash.
The Wampanoag tribe had a matriarch system where women controlled property and hereditary status was passed through the maternal line.
They survived off the sea and were great farmers.
Elder Wampanoag women approved chiefs.
In 1620, Cape Cod was among the first places settled by the English in North America, and within the next 20 years, they established communities up and down the Cape.
Improper and intensive farming led to erosion. Settlers heated fires with 20 cords of wood, which is like 3,000 cubic feet.
By 1800, much of the Cape Cod's firewood had to be transported from Maine. Over 80% of the Wampanoag population was decimated due to the disease and violence from the European settlers.
Today, slightly more than 2,000 Wampanoag are counted as enrolled members of the nation. The Cape Cod town of Mashpee has a tribe more than 1,400 enrolled members who must meet defined membership requirements, including lineage, community involvement, and reside within 20 miles of Mashpee. Since 1924, they have held an annual powwow at the beginning of July in Mashpee.
In 1976, the Wampanoag tribe sued the town of Barnstable for the return of their ancestral homeland. The case was lost, but the tribe has continued to pursue for over 3 decades.
Low-key trash. Low-key trash. Low-key trash. Welcome to the bay. Low-key trash. Yo, listen, we've been creating forever, man. What do you mean creativity? You know, and that's people you carry along. Those people you carry along with you throughout life. Yo, listen, don't judge us. This is Cape Cod. Life on the tip.
I love Cape Cod and watching fly bitches with great eyes. Assertive force off the shore. The yellow bastard found a way. Off the shore. It's that black boy joy on the bay. Really from the Cape Cod. Tan bitches with green eyes. Right. Cape Cod, Cape tippin'. You like I love Cape Cod and watching fly bitches with great eyes. I rap for really from the Cape. You rappers fake. You sound like every other rapper. The yellow bastard found a way through the pasture to crash the net. A great volley on the point, coin a phrase for change. Hey, it's that black boy joy on the bay. The sound the wave, turn it up. They buying it up like Monopoly. My team coming for the guap. It's green paper and blue faces. Different races surround the cipher as we change their face like diapers. Wipe that shit eating grin off your man. Often tan bitches with green eyes. It's Cape Cod with the Nas. I part the sea like Moses. With my staff we focus. Your raps is bogus. In fact, revoke it. You're not welcome. Thank you. I got seldom hate too. I break through, cutting edge, slice your windpipe for the bread. This that shit you never heard.
Alright, cut. Episode's over. No way, one more. We gotta keep going. What do you mean? What do you mean? Yeah. It's over? It's over? Oh, no way, no. We need some